Hi, I am Victoria Maharsky, ESG specialist at Green Builder Media, and today I'm here with Christopher Matos-Rogers, associate broker and realtor at Coldwell Banker Realty. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. So, can you explain in simple terms what the NAR settlement is about?
That is a great question. So a lot of people have heard about the NAR settlement, and there's a lot of confusion, a lot of bad reporting about what actually is part of this process. So this proposed settlement at this point, and it is important to point out that it is just proposed. It will likely be accepted later this year, although there will be changes that will go into effect later this summer. So the two parts of that are that first, buyer brokerage compensation in many cases has been tied to the listing agent, right? So they get a payment from the seller for total commission and have many times offered a portion of that to the buyer broker to bring a buyer to the listing. So right now, like if you go to Zillow, Realtor.com, any of the websites, individual brokerage websites, when you scroll down and look at the listing information, there is a field, like all the other fields that populate from the MLS to those public sites. There's one for a buyer broker co-op fee. You know, the language kind of might be different by market, but it's essentially usually a percentage or a total dollar amount that the listing agent and the seller are offering to a buyer broker to bring a buyer to the house. That will no longer be allowed to be in the MLS, so that MLS field will go away. So agents will not see it in the MLS, and of course, that field will not exist in the MLS, therefore cannot be populated out to a public site. A lot of these details are still working out, so there may be, there could be something that comes out in the next couple of months where maybe individual sites start inputting this field, but for now, it will not be publicly promoted through the MLS and therefore the channels that it would normally go through. Incorrect information, at least at this time, is that it is not going away. It will not necessarily be impossible, but it's just not going to be listed in the MLS. The second part, and this will probably be new to a lot of buyers. So I'm in Georgia. We have had a buyer brokerage agreement for several decades at this point. So it's not unusual for buyers in our state to understand signing a buyer brokerage agreement with an agent before they go look at houses. But there are over 20 states where they have not used buyer brokerage agreements. So that's the other part of this agreement. So now buyers, when you go and you start to work with an agent, you will have to sign a buyer brokerage agreement before seeing any homes. So it'll be great for transparency. Many agents already have these discussions around compensation and how they're compensated, what the fee is. But in cases where this wasn't happening, now it will be happening. But that'll be a change that buyers will see on the front end because they'll be asked to sign this form that maybe they hadn't been asked before.
How do you anticipate this settlement impacting the housing market? Like, what should home buyers and sellers expect? Will affordability go down, up? Um, what's your outlook on that?
Everybody has a different idea what's going to happen here. What I will say most certainly is that over the next 6 to 12 months, there's going to be mass confusion in the market. It's already starting to creep in. We're already starting to see people try some of these things that are being talked about in the media. The truth is, though, they've always been an option. People could always list their house without a broker. People could always buy a home without a broker. You were never forced or required to have one. But of course, with it being talked about, people are curious and not sure. And so it's coming front of mind again. And so I think over the next 6 to 12 months, especially once we reach this August date that the changes have been published as happening, and of course, as it continues in the news cycle, I think we'll see people try some of these things. I think it's definitely going to make things harder for people who are lower income, people who are first-time buyers, people who are putting less money down, because if they end up buying a home where there isn't an offer of compensation for the buyer brokerage offered, they may have to therefore pay their buyer's agent. The good news is, again, a lot of this is developing so quickly. For example, VA mortgages, they are not actually allowed to reimburse their agent. However, through NAR's advocacy, because this was obviously going to be an issue for VA buyers who, again, low down payment, veterans, they actually just announced, I think 2 weeks ago at this point, that at least for now, they are temporarily waiving that ban. So now VA buyers will be able to compensate their agents as part of the transaction if the seller does not. And that hopefully will become a permanent solution. So you're going to see a lot of these things changing. You're going to find different solutions coming to the market. That's what the market always does. It always finds the new normal. It finds the solutions that the buyers and sellers need.
What questions should buyers and sellers ask these realtors before signing on with them?
So the great news is that in this way, it hasn't changed from what it was before. Buyers and sellers always should have been asking an agent, what is your compensation model? How are you compensated? I think more of them will be asking now than maybe they weren't doing this in the past. Agents also have to be prepared to explain and know what their fees are and to be able to understand why they are, express their value. Also, when you are interviewing an agent, whether a buyer or a seller, you need to really ask what sets them apart. I hate to sound kind of cliche, but you need to understand, what is your volume of business? There was as part of this whole settlement that went on in the news cycle, there was a data point shared, and it was supposed to be groundbreaking, but it's actually a very old data point. It's just a historic data point that is consistent over time, that about half of agents do 0 to 1 transactions a year, right? So if you are working with one of those agents, they are not going to have the consistent business to understand the nuances of the market across price points, different neighborhoods. Even just this year, we've had some real challenges with, speaking of, sustainability and climate change, with insurance, right? On single family homes, even in a state like Georgia, where we're not Florida, we're not California, that have had these catastrophic insurance losses. We've got some new challenges on people being able to get new homeowners policies written when they buy a home, or having drastic rate increases, particularly around concerns with roofs over 10 or 15 years old. We've also had an issue with HOAs and them not having a low enough deductible to be warrantable for conventional financing in many cases. So, these are all things that if you're not an agent that's doing multiple deals a year, you're not going to be able to be prepared to help your client know that, hey, these things might be going on, but here's how we can get around them. Here's how we can be prepared. Here's how we can, help you succeed in this market. It's constant change. There's constant challenges. And, so understanding how much business somebody does, what their level of experience is important. Also, what do you do? Most people really view a real estate agent as somebody who simply opens doors. Maybe they find the house for you, and maybe they do a little bit of negotiating on the deal. Now, of course, this varies state by state, but in many cases, actually, I'll just talk about me here in Georgia. We go well beyond that. We are doing a lot of expectation setting on the front end. We also have a whole host of vendors that we can recommend and share a list with you, starting all the way at the beginning with a great lender that is going to do proper pre-qualification or pre-approval, so that when you are ready to put an offer, that you're solidly pre-approved and you're not going to have any surprises and suddenly not be able to qualify for that loan. But all the way through, from home inspectors, follow-up inspections, and vendors, so that you can be a very, very informed buyer, understand what you're getting. But we also add, obviously, climate change and sustainability perspectives as well as part of that. Home inspections, understanding the age of your systems, and helping you create a plan for planned obsolescence of systems, and so that you can budget over time and not have surprise cost when that HVAC unit hits 15, 20 years old and dies on you. So understanding that and leading to success is ultimately what you want to find with a realtor partner before you sign on with them, on either side, buyers or sellers.